Just a couple opening statements, and I'll take your questions. Starting off, wrapping up the game from Northern Arizona. You know, obviously watching the film. Tell you what, man, I'm really impressed with Case Cookus. That was probably my number one takeaway. Some of the throws that he made were pretty good throws, and obviously being down a couple guys in the back end didn't help us in the second half. And he was able to I think do a really good job of identifying coverage and going to the right spot with the right type of throw. You know, especially when you're trying to protect your corner some and playing some cover two, it's a challenging throw. You kind of got to throw what we call a two ball, kind of a line shot down the sideline in between the corner and the safety, and really didn't matter what we did. He put the ball where it needed to be, and you know, a lot of very, very impressed with that kid and the way he played in the second half, and equally as impressed with the way our kids played. You know, to be quite honest with you, I don't know that there's very many teams in the country that would go through some of the devastating losses that we've had to face and keep getting back off the mat. I think that says a heck of a lot about the character of these young men, the toughness that they show. I do not think that we're the most talented team every time we walk out there, but I know this, it's going to be a full quarter fight. And tell you something else, if you didn't have season tickets to the Bobcats this year, you missed a lot of exciting football. And you know, hopefully we've got one more opportunity to go out and play and give it our best, which I know these young men will, and kind of look ahead to the University of Montana now. So 117th Brawl of the Wild, one of the greatest college football rivalries in the country, regardless of any classification. The passion and energy surrounding this game are second to none. Very unique in the state of Montana, where you have no NFL teams. We are the show, we being Montana State and Montana, and this is Montana's Super Bowl. And so I don't think there's going to need to be a whole lot of rah-rah speeches in the locker room on either side before the game on Saturday, and because the build-up will be, I think, appropriate for this kind of contest. And so as I look at the University of Montana, I think with the way that their program is built around what Coach Stitt wants to do on offense, it starts and ends with the quarterback. And I think Gresh Jensen has done a really nice job, you know, filling in for Phillips as the year went on, and been very impressed with his poise. He's completing his passes at 60%. He's got a number of good targets. I'd actually say that I think they're a little better at receiver this year than they were a year ago. A little more well-rounded, and you know, he's doing a nice job taking care of the ball by and large. 19 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. He's a good runner. He's a guy that especially in the red zone, he's a threat to run. He can make you pay with his feet a little bit. He's more physical than you think, and he's a 220-pound kid about. I think he's a tough kid. I think he understands what they're trying to do on offense, and probably the best attribute that he has for that style of offense is that he gets the ball out of his hands very fast. And so that allows some of those lateral plays, the quicks and the nows and the bubble screens that go out to guys like Jerry Lou McGee to get there even faster, and allows those blocks not to have to hold up quite so long on the edge. And so I think those are all things that make him fit what they're doing there at Montana very well, and I think Gresh has done a really nice job. I'm impressed with him. They kind of have the 1-2 punch at running back, you know, with Calhoun and Lee. They're different style of runners, but they're equally effective. Their number one run plays inside zone. I think Calhoun's about as good a zone runner as I've seen. He does a great job of what I call hugging the backside wall. Does a really nice job of trusting those offensive linemen to do their job, and they've got a big physical group up front. You can kind of see, it's funny because I've competed against Chad Germer when he was at Wyoming, when he was at UNLV, when we were in the Mountain West, and the WAC when I was at Boise, and then last year with Chad's group. You can see his identity sinking in on this O-line a little bit more. They're a little more nasty, a little more physical up front than they were a year ago, and I think that has contributed to their balance on offense. They're a much more balanced team offensively, you know, running the ball about half the time and throwing the ball about half the time. And so, like I said, those two guys are a good complement to one another. Wide receiver, we already talked about Louis McGee. He's kind of the straw that stirs the drink over there. They get the ball in his hands in a variety of ways, whether that be on return, in the return game, quick screens, fly sweeps, a little bit more involved in the drop back pass game than he was a year ago, but a dynamic athlete, and you know, always pull for those Coeur d'Alene kids, those North Idaho kids. And then you got Torrey, Keenan Curran, and Calhoun. Those guys are pretty good. They're long, fast, do a good job of going up and catching 50-50 balls. They'll run their RPO stuff, and all of them are capable. And the Semis kid, I think, has kind of become the jack of all trades for him. And you know, he's a kid. I know his dad Todd really well. His dad's a great high school football coach down in the Boise area. McKinnon's done an amazing job. You know, I think that's kind of. I was glad to see him be able to get his opportunity to shine. I know it's not gone exactly the way he wanted it to, but that guy's been a clutch player for him in a variety of ways. He holds for him on field goals. He's their personal protector for him. And in the punt game, he'll cover kickoffs. He'll fill in and play quarterback if they need him to. And so he's done a nice job for him. And we already kind of talked about the O-line. So big challenge there in terms of what they do on offense and how we're going to be able to, hold down that attack. And Coach Stitt and his reputation is, being a kind of an offensive mastermind and what they do and the tempo that they use. And so those are all things that present a lot of challenges for us. Defensively, one word, pressure. They bring it when they get off the bus, and then they bring it often. They're probably about 45% of the time they're bringing more than 4, whether it's add-in and green dog stuff or it's design pressure. They'll run man-free pressures. They'll run zero pressures. A lot of line movement, and it's a huge challenge. I think they've got 7 fumbles and 16 interceptions this year, so pretty good at turning the ball over. And I think a lot of that starts with their ability to pressure hit and confuse the quarterback. Their front 7. D-line is long and rangy and athletic. I think they've got the best 3 linebackers in the league. 36, 10, 42 are good football players, and they're really productive. Good tacklers. You can tell that they own the scheme. They understand what they're supposed to be doing. They play with good balance and eyes. And I think those guys, all 3, have exceptional playmaking ability, and I think all 3 of them are near the tops in the leagues in terms of their number of tackles. I think Bus doesn't quite get as many because he's playing on the edge, but he might be the most athletic of the 3. And so that's a ball hawking secondary. They got all their weapons back with suspensions and injuries. You can tell they're kind of a whole unit again and create a lot of negative plays on defense. And then lastly, in the kicking game, they've got a really productive, kind of a hot kicker right now, which is always something you want late in the season. The Purdy kid's been really good for him recently. And then we already talked about Louis McGee and his ability to change the game as he did against NAU with a return for a touchdown. Had another one called back earlier in the year, and so he's a danger every time he touches the ball because you don't know where it's going, and I'm not sure he does either. And so that's kind of scary sometimes when you can read what they're trying to do return-wise, but he doesn't always follow the script. And when he's at his most dangerous is when he's playing outside the scheme sometimes. And so huge challenge. 7-3 football team. I'm sure I haven't seen polls. Are they ranked this week? No. So they're probably just outside the top 25. A lot on the line for them and their program. I think they probably secure a playoff bid if they win the game on Saturday, and so they're going to come in here, and I know they have a bad taste in their mouth from a year ago, we're just a little Montana State trying to play out the string here. So
exciting. Does that? Obviously, you say the players don't need to be motivated, but does it maybe motivate them a little bit more? I know last year you guys kind of put an end to their playoff chances too. Now you get a chance maybe to do that again. Is it a little added motivation here?
This is about Montana State and our players, and from an internal standpoint, if we start worrying about them too much, we're going to not be focused on what we need to be focused on. And so, all those are things that you can talk about after the game's over. But for us, this is our seniors' last opportunity to play in front of their home crowd, an opportunity to be a part of a really special game that they'll remember for the remainder of their lives, and an opportunity to maybe put a little bit of a silver lining on this cloud of season.
How impressive was their defensive performance against Northern Colorado? I know maybe Northern Colorado's in full strength, but how impressive was that?
Well, as I said, they just kept taking the ball away. Now, there's probably some decisions that I'm sure, Coach Collins at Northern Colorado would be like, that was not a great decision. You got to make it hard on them. But, hey, let's be honest, that's a tough environment to play in. Northern Colorado down some guys late in the season. They're not playing for a whole lot. And do you give Montana credit? They jumped on them early, took care of them, and put them away. And, the game was over within the first probably, 12 to 15 minutes. And so, they got to rest a lot of their guys. We hadn't even kicked off, and most of their guys were showered and ready to go home. So I'm sure that was a nice advantage for them yesterday, or Saturday.
I know you mentioned Elijah Lee, but how much of a difference has he made for them? The guy who dropped down from the FBS and really has added another level to their.
Yeah, I think he's a different kind of runner than the Calhoun kid. Calhoun's a big, physical, 6 foot, 220 pound kind of downhill guy. As I mentioned, I think he's got really good vision, has a great feel for the inside zone play, runs the one back power well too. But Lee's maybe a little bit better out of the backfield, and kind of a quick, shorter guy in space. But you got to have more than one back, and I think that's given them kind of a 1-2 punch, like I said, and led to maybe a little bit more of their balance on offense.
You talked last year about Montana State needing to do a better job of making this a rivalry. Did you feel like you planted those seeds last year?
Well, I think, not to interrupt you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, but Go ahead.
I got it. I can do these interviews now, Greg. You know, you just. Well, I think the whole thing is this: you know, it's obviously a very important game, but you know, winning it makes it more of a rivalry. Obviously, you can tell there's a heightened sense of urgency from the noise that's coming out of Missoula this week than there was a year ago. I don't know that they respected us very much a year ago, and that probably led to the result and the outcome. So I guess maybe if anything else, we've got their attention. And so I'm not sure they still respect us very much, but at least we have their attention.
What did last year's win in Missoula do for the momentum of this program this year, and how do you carry that into this game?
Well, I think it was important for us just from the standpoint of what we're trying to do, what we're trying to build here, because you know, there's a lot of heavy lifting that goes into changing culture when you're walking into a place and you've got a different vision than maybe the previous regime did, and you know, there's some growing pains and there's some guys that are going to move on. And the buy-in maybe helps a ton, you know, when you get a win like we did in November last year. And, you know, I think the energy level was good, helped us in recruiting, helped us, I think, maybe to enjoy the holidays a little bit more. You know, I mean, there's a lot of positives, obviously. And so, you know, your goal is to always win the last game you play every year, you know, whether it's a rivalry game like this or a playoff game.
Home field advantage really hasn't been an issue in this rivalry. Why do you think that is?
Well, I mean, I think there's sometimes something to going into kind of that us against the world mentality when you're going into the belly of the beast, so to speak. I mean, you know, you're in enemy territory, and you kind of have to stick together. I mean, I don't think that Montana State's beaten the University of Montana since 2005 in Bozeman. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So that's a long time. That's a long time, even if you're only doing it every other year. And so, you know, they've obviously kind of had our number here in Bozeman, and I don't know that it's that significant in terms of determining the outcome of the game, where you play, as much as it is how you play.
How battle tested do you think you guys are having, I mean, every week?
I don't know if you can get any more battle tested than we are. As I said, I mean, I'm being 100% honest here. I think most teams would have quit a long time ago. And I think this speaks to the job that our coaches have done and to the character of the young men in our locker room. That, you know, you line them up and schedule them, we'll play them anytime, any place, anywhere, and you better be ready for a ball game. And we've made some mistakes, you know. I mean, we had, you know, a true freshman that gets a targeting penalty that kills us in the third quarter of that game. 2 true freshmen that get roughing the punter penalties, you know. One leads to a touchdown, you know, and but it's amazing to be on our sideline. You know, I think most teams say, oh man, here we go again. You know what our guys say? Here we go. I'm extremely proud of them. I mean, it's been impressive to watch. I just think, I mean, I'll tell you what, employers out there, you find a guy that was on the 2017 Bobcat team and hire him, because they ain't gonna quit, they're gonna give you their best. And I think that's one of the things that I can say about this group of young men that I take a great deal of pride in.
So is there any reason to think that this game won't have that same?
Like I said, buy a ticket and it'll be a good game. Show up wherever we play. It's going to go into the fourth quarter. It's going to be a one possession game. And, you know, somebody will kick a field goal. Somebody will make a play. You know, somebody will go for 2. Whatever it is. You know, it'll be worth it.
Last year, it took a tremendous amount of passion and energy to get a win there. Can you replicate that this year? And what was the difference last year that made it so unique, that win?
Well, our margin for error is very small, and we did not make mistakes in that game. You know, we executed the game plan about as well as we could have. We didn't turn the ball over. We took advantage of one of their mistakes. We controlled field position with our kicking game. We had a goal line stand. We had some explosive plays. There were some things in that game that I think just, you know, ball bounces your way now and then. I certainly, you know, don't anticipate there to be any real carryover every time you tee it up. It's a different game, it's a different environment, it's a different team. But I do think that I think there'll be the same level of energy and passion on the field. And you know, obviously Montana's going to come in here with an edge too, and so I think that's going to increase that. But here's the thing. As I told our young men last week, you know, you go into an environment like NAU, and you know they've got senior day and Jerome's last game, and all those things creating it around that. After about a minute and a half, that's gone. You know, that's over. That's for the fans in the stands, and And you've got to keep your composure, and you've got to go execute between the white lines. And so the stuff that goes on after the play, the stuff that goes on before the play is irrelevant. You got to live in the moment and play each snap.
Were you able to see a lot of tape on them through the year?
Yeah, we actually had a lot of common opponents.
Okay.
I'm sure we both sides have watched a bunch, I would imagine.
Yeah.
You know, we played them after they played Idaho State. We played them after they played Portland State. They followed us up a couple times with Northern Colorado and some other teams, and so, you know, you always kind of have one eye on them, I guess, maybe when they pop up on the schedule and you're watching the next opponent.
I know there's kind of been a discussion about what people call the game. I guess, do you have any preference or thoughts on the?
I thought you were talking about the brawl, that's the Cat-Griz game.
Okay.
That's what it's called, just so you know. Remember, you work for Bozeman newspaper, so you gotta get the name right.
How eager are you to kind of get out of this maybe spoiler role, even though you're not maybe thinking of it that way, but
Yeah.
to have this game mean more for you guys, how eager are you and the staff to get to that point?
Well, I think it's going to take care of itself. You know, I mean, you just got to have a lot of faith and a lot of conviction when you're in these situations that we're doing it the right way, and we're building this thing with a foundation that's going to stand the test of time. You know, run the ball, stop the run, recruit good kids, take care of your stuff in the classroom, treat people with dignity and respect, work your tail off, and it might not come on your timeline, but it's going to come. And I know you know, it sounds like a broken record, but I believe it. I wouldn't be sitting here if I didn't. I would have said, "Here's the whistle. I'm out of here." You know, and you know, close doesn't get you much, but you go ask the coaches around this league what they think of what we're doing here. I think you'll probably get an answer that says they're going to be good.
What are the biggest keys to slowing down that prolific offense?
Well, I think it's maybe getting them off schedule is probably the most important thing. They do such a nice job of getting you know, quality gains on first down, whether it's through the run game or kind of the extension of the run game, which is getting the ball out on the perimeter. And so if you can, you know, hey, they throw an incompletion, you stuff them for a 1-yard gain or a negative play and get them off schedule a little bit and force them into a little bit more of a drop back game. That's not that they're not capable of doing that. They certainly are, but I think that's one of the keys is trying to get them off schedule. It's almost like an option offense, really, in a lot of ways, in that respect.
What are the biggest differences this year, year two, for you and your staff compared to the first year going into this game?
You know, I mean, I think I understood this rivalry pretty well. And so I don't think that there's a lot of differences in terms of how we're approaching this game. You know, I think we know a little bit more about each other and what our strengths and weaknesses are. But, you know, I think I was pretty well prepared for this contest just because of my background and where I've lived and who I've been associated with. And so if I'm following your question correctly, I think that's kind of what I look at it as. I knew this was a big dadgum deal when I got here. It didn't take much of a learning curve for me.
I guess going back to the topic of staying on schedule, is that the theme or the message to your offense, given how well they've pressured on
Yeah,
third down?
well, I mean, they bring it on third down, but they bring it on first down too. So it's not, you know, they're an equal opportunity pressure unit. They don't discriminate based on down and distance. And so I think it's more about identifying it and having a good plan as to how to attack it. I think that's the critical element, is presenting those looks to, you know, our offensive line. It's not just Chris, it's our offensive line too. How to pick those things up throughout the course of the week so that we can just go operate and be in our comfort zone on Saturday.
The matchup between Jared Padmos and Jerry Lou McGee could be a significant one, wouldn't you say, based on the way Jared is kicking the ball right now and the way Jerry can change a game?
Yeah, well, I mean, there was obviously a huge difference in the game 2 weeks ago. You know, when you the quarterback thing's now a wash because Gresh is out and so's Case, and so what's the difference going to be in the game? And you know, Montana had the advantage on special teams. They blocked an extra point and returned a punt for a touchdown, and they, you know, won the game by 2 points. So that was a huge difference in the game. And with the style that we play, you know, I think that's one of the things that we've got to make sure is that we don't give up something in the kicking game that could have a larger impact. And so, you know, I think Jared's done a nice job of moving the ball around and keeping it away from people. And he's got a big job this week because Jerry's such a threat.
maybe minus Portland State and Northern Colorado, Montana, defensively has had a propensity to give up big plays on the back end, kind of with that pressure look, a lot of zero coverage over the top. Do you guys find any way to take advantage of that, or does the game plan stay a little bit more on the ground like it did last year?
Well, you know, those explosive plays can come in a variety of ways. It's not just through the air. They give up a lot of explosive run plays too. And when you break the line of scrimmage, there ain't a post safety there. You know, we did it last week. It was a huge play in our game right before the first half. We ran a pressure. We had a post safety, and the guy ran away from us. So, you know, people understand. You know, why am I not apt to do that sometimes? You know, there's some negative things that can happen, and we played reasonably well in the red zone defensively, and I think that you know, we know they're a talented group, and they've got a lot of skill talent, and just what they do and the emphasis that they place on their system, they're gonna run it at a high level. And so what we've got to do is realize that they're going to get some yards and they're going to make some plays. But what we need to do is make sure we play great red zone defense and give ourselves an opportunity to be in this game in the fourth quarter, just like we have, you know, every other opportunity that we've had this year. That's outside of the Washington State game. They've all been fourth quarter games.
Does Jalen have to sit the first half?
That would be my understanding, yes.
Okay. So is that as big a deal with Tyrell coming back then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it's a big deal.
Okay.
I think that's, you know, they had a guy, Idaho State had a guy similar. I wouldn't insult Jerry and say that the guy's as good as Jerry, because I think he's maybe a step below him right now, but they have that number 20, the slot receiver from Idaho State,
Yeah.
who came in was leading their team in receptions and yards, and had 2 catches for 12 yards in that game because we put number 8 on him.
Yeah.
Not Chris Murray, but Jalen
Yeah.
Cole. And so, you know, I'd like to see Jalen be able to match up against Jerry. Not that he's going to shut Jerry down, but be able to match up against him so that we feel like we've got our best guys out there. But hey, it's that time of year, man. You know, whether it's, you know, injuries or things like what happened on Saturday, you got to be able to go next man up, and we will.